market is different. And again, there is no way that we will have enough resources, in the traditional framework, to have enough doctors, nurses, clinicians for an aging population that needs more treatment. So the only way is to go more to preventative care and health. But the market has not been built, this framework was not built for that. So how do I change that? We are already overwhelmed with what AI can do and the speed and all that. We are going to be shocked about the combination of quantum and AI. Because again, let's simplify it, it's still like the human brain, but just quicker and more, but it's still kind of one step after the other, logic and all that. And I'm also one of those guys saying sick care system is not healthcare, the system is broken and all that kind of things. So maybe if we stop really and think about it, in many places, the healthcare system is not broken, it's working exactly as designed.
Today, we're joined by our co-hosts, Harvey Castro and Edward Marks. And it seems both of them are in Dallas. And of course, we have our amazing guest today, Mr. Philippe Gerwill. He is known in the industry to be an futurist for AI.
Okay, thank you very much, for the kind introduction, but even more for the invitation, because, I love this kind of, very open discussion, not prepared, running with the flow, So my name is Philippe Gerwill, as mentioned. So I spent 30 years in big corporation. I would say half of it in specialty chemicals and half of it in pharma. So my last job was at Novartis. So during my time, Novartis and even specialty chemicals, I was mainly IT, supply chain, time of blockchain, IoT, big data, all that stuff, which I'm not saying is not there anymore, but it become at least, we don't talk less about it, is part of the landscape. But then I moved more on the healthcare side, and more as a patient. And it was quite interesting because I said, I talked also early on, and I think that's the time where I met also Harvey in person, about the healthcare metaverse, which is, and it might be an interesting topic, not the healthcare metaverse, but the whole adoption of those technologies, everything is going quick, but the adoption is still not that quick, so I think we still are facing that issue. As said, I may be older than some of you, but I lived in a time where technology was behind. Technology couldn't deliver what we were needing in the business. Now I think it's the opposite. Technology is quicker, and we are slow in the adoption. So. But as I said, I'm an international speaker. I went to many countries. I'm very proud that some of the countries I did together with Harvey, but I'm also a humanist. So that's the point. And people ask me, what does that mean? Digitalization, humanist, or however you call it. And for me, it's basically, I'm a big fan of all those technologies, but that those technologies should serve the human and not the other way around. And I think we have a lot of challenges in that space because, we could even become better human again, because I'm saying again, because I think we lost some of that, in that space. But the risk of not doing it is probably higher than doing that.
Felipe, it's great to have you as part of Signal and Symptoms, and you bring a great perspective. But yeah, someone said something provocative to me earlier this week, and I wanted to get, as a futurist and as a humanist, wanted to get your perspective on it. And they were like, "Hey, AI is a bubble. Like, are we in a bubble, or are we in a hype cycle at the peak of, over expectations? What's your thought on that whole general concept with AI?"
Yeah, so first of all, I think it depends what we call a bubble, because I think there will be definitely changes, it's ongoing, things are going quickly, but it's not going to disappear. So the only thing when I'm saying where I could argue about the word bubble, there are still too many solutions out there. And I would even argue about the word solutions. Are there really solutions, So again, everybody is using AI, not everybody, the word AI, sorry, but not everybody is having AI. So from that point of view, I can accept that, kind of bubbles, some will disappear. Some smaller bubbles will disappear or being integrated into bigger or not. We talked about localization. Part of it is global and part is going to be localization. When you travel around the world, and it seems that you are also traveling a lot, you see that it's still not one size fits all. So we should, of course, kind of part of it should be global, but part of it should be localized, starting with the language. Especially if you talk about patient, English is not there everywhere, so all that. But again, in that case, AI is not a bubble, because AI will help you in terms of the languages, in terms of literacy, also,
Harvey, why don't you answer the same question?
So going from Ed's question, are we, or from his friend's question, are we in a bubble? I see it as a cultural shift. I don't. I see the point of the, oh, it's a bubble. We're spending all this money, and we're putting all this things, and it's gonna explode, and nothing's gonna happen. I don't see it that way. In that, I see it growing. The foundation is being built. Cultural awareness is changing, and your mind has shifted, and you see things, and you're doing things. And so, in my mind, I see AI has just shifted the way we work, the way we do things, and it's just created this new way of doing things, and it's just a shift. So my question is, based on, let's just say, the last 6 months of all the conferences, all the things you're seeing, what has really wowed you? You're like, wow, X concept, or this is coming in the future. What is that you can share with us?
I don't know if you want completely to jump there, but I know you're also a big fan of those discussions, Harvey. The question about quantum computing. We are already overwhelmed with what AI can do and the speed and all that. We are going to be shocked about the combination of quantum and AI. Because again, let's simplify it, it's still like the human brain, but just quicker and more. But it's still kind of one step after the other, logic and all that. Quantum is going to think differently than a human brain. It's going to revolutionize the stuff. But the doctor should not be the guy who has to enter data. The doctor should be the one that looks into the patient's eyes and make the human touch. And in the early days, we had these things from ChatGPT, that patients said that ChatGPT was more empathetic than doctors, and the reality is it's wrong. It is that the doctors are not human anymore. The doctors are becoming robots, and that's the point. You compare robots to robots, then you're going to lose. So we have to reinforce the human skills. So we have now to concentrate, teach education, which is also not the quickest industry, to concentrate on critical thinking, emotional intelligence, cultural intelligence, and all that, because we are on the way to losing that.
Amazingly true. I want to go back to your experience, that how you have seen the healthcare side, but how the pharma side and the chemical side is changing in the age of AI. And given that, alpha protein fold, given that we actually have these new biologics and everything coming, what are your thoughts, and when did that flywheel going to go?
Yes, of course, a very, very interesting question, because again, I think the key point behind your question is also when is the timing. Because I said most of the things are accelerating, but in some space you are still not accelerating. And I'm also one of those guys saying sick care system is not healthcare, the system is broken and all the kind of things. So maybe if we stop really and think about it, in many places, the healthcare system is not broken, is working exactly as designed. You see, as long as we don't go in that direction, that the design was done, years ago for another era, for another knowledge and whatever, I think it's going to be difficult to change it. You even know, even the medical students in the US, in the UK, many countries, 30% of the medical students are not going to start as clinicians. And one of the key reasons, so there are mainly two from what I know. One is the bureaucracy, the paperwork that you mentioned before, because you don't learn to be a doctor to fill data, to fill forms and data online. And the second one is work-life balance. The younger generation has another view of work-life balance, and I don't want to go there to say who is wrong or right. Was it our generation? Is it their generation? I think even it doesn't help to have the discussion. But the point is, we have to do it differently. The market is different. And again, there is no way that we will have enough resources in the traditional framework, to have enough doctors, nurses, clinicians for an aging population that needs more treatment. So the only way is to go more to preventative care and health. But the market has not been built, this framework was not built for that. So how do I change that? How is pharma going to move there? And for the moment, I said there is a lot of opportunities in pharma, but on the drug discovery side. So, you have company like In Silico Medicine and others, they have already, discovered some of the first drug with AI. So for the moment, it's still in their old model of pharma. They can be quicker, have less waste, but it's still not something about prevention. So I think, on one side we see we need to move into prevention so that people stay healthy longer, And when I talk in some longevity events recently, I pinned a different quote, saying, because somebody said we should move from sick care to seek care. And I said we should move from seek care to seek health. I'm not seeking care. We should seek health. So there is stuff like that with medicine that is going to come. That what you learned at school is even wrong, is doing more damage than something else. And that's another point which I think is important because of the technology, AI and some others. We might learn more in the next 10 years than in the last 100 years. So how are we prepared to that speed?
You're absolutely true. The biggest blockers, like currently, the data silos exist because of the EHRs. And then one of the issues that they're trying to pull is protecting their way of life, essentially, at the end of the day. So, Ed, make me a connection between wellness tech and med tech. And what Felipe is also saying, that how that connection is important from going from sick care to healthcare. And then finally, the largest, hardest question to you, as usual, I'm not going to make easy for you, is that how will it impact the revenue cycle, the pricing models, and how the insurance companies are going to adjust to it? Paint me a picture between wellness tech and med tech combining, or what do you think is going to happen?
I think by and large, there's a couple exceptions of very small countries that are able to pull it off because of their size and having sort of a socialist framework for medicine that is hard to pull off because there's just not the alignment of the incentives. And we talked about that. It's better to do sick care. You make more money. A health system by itself, like if we stick sort of to the West, a health system by itself can't make this happen because they would go out of business because not everyone else is playing in the same way. But at the same time, they have to balance, margin and mission to make these sort of things happen. So I think the best thing that can happen is when it's smaller countries, that prove this out, where they have maybe a single system for wellness and can align the incentives. I think that is where we're seeing some progress. But there are examples around the world where communities have gotten together sort of to align incentives. And interestingly, the hospitals are not a big part of it because, as we know, it's all about your environment, your social network, your belief systems, your nutrition. We need a bold leader, I think, that's going to get out there and say we're going to do it this way and make it happen, and it'll be painful, and we just need that bold visionary leadership and someone to say this is what we're doing, we're going to make it happen. But I think that's what it's going to take because nothing's going to change unless someone takes bold stance.
Yeah, and again, it's a lot about we still working in silos, and I'm not talking just medicine, but the whole ecosystem is like that, and everyone, and again, a lot of them make money, so why should they change it?
Jimmy, what do you think of that statement? What do you think? Should we replace radiology and forget about radiologists?
The tasks of radiologists: identifying a cancer, identifying a lesion, differentiating, sizing of one cancer to another cancer. All of these tasks for radiologists will be gone because of AI. But the job of the radiologist is not going to go away. So clearly we need to upscale our current radiologists to do the job they were intended to do and optimize their task as much as we do with AI. So we're not going to replace radiologists with the current demand, actually, but what we are going to do in the future is replace a lot of 80 to 90% of their tasks, and very quickly, actually, within a year or two, Harvey. So it's just kind of like an odd situation, by the way, Harvey. But long story short, I think we need to differentiate between job and task, and I think tasks are going away. Jobs may persist depending again how fast things go forward and moving forward.
I always say this, guys. It's the great shift that's happening today. You and I work a certain way, but before AI, we were uh, the way we were trained is not how we practice medicine. The way we started any institution that you work for isn't the way you continue to work. We all pivot, we all remodel, we all change. The only difference is the rate of change now is quicker, is faster. We're adopting. So with that said, we have to change the tools. Give you a quick example. If the data is collected in space on the weather, our accuracy combined with AI will give us better models than we have today. And Google has actually showed that already. So my point is this: we need to stay humble. We need to learn how to shift, understand this technology, and keep coming to podcasts like this so that we can see things coming. And obviously, having guests like today of the future.
What are actually the biggest challenge in AI is infrastructure, energy, and the chips. And we still look how I can get more of the same rather than maybe looking at something completely different. And the space is something completely different. And I'm just trying to say, if you can do that rather than lithium or something else, and that's what I'm saying, we just look to find where can I find more lithium rather than look at something different. But there's another, we might find something else, something different that could solve one of the actual biggest problems.
You're so right. I mean, it is getting harder to pick up. Again, reminder, it is not the AI bubble, this is a human bubble. I'm telling you that I had to fire people who were not able to catch up. And honestly, are humans truly able to catch up or not? And then what are your thoughts? Is it getting overwhelming? Is it getting too scary? I'm going to start with Felipe, and then Ed, and then we'll close with Harvey today.
I think for me, yes and no, because personally, I enjoy it. I love it. I have more fun. Officially, I'm on early retirement. I never worked as much as now, but I do what I love to do. You can go with your kids to the park and all that stuff. That I'm saying, if it's done well, we can become better human, because not everybody is loving 100% of the jobs they're doing every day. It's a pain. We do it to make money and all that kind of things. So if we can choose what you can do, I still think as a human, there's a lot of things we can do.
Here's my only sort of additional thought around that. We're not an AI bubble. We're doing all these crazy things, but it's a very select few of us that are doing these crazy things, and we just have to be careful that we don't create even a bigger gap than exists today with people who have access to certain things and people who don't. And so that AI, I'm afraid if not handled carefully, the AI could exasperate that gap. So I think it's up to all of us as leaders to make sure that we're while we're always exploring and pushing boundaries and doing cool new things, that we also make sure that we don't leave people behind and try to help as much as we can.
At the end of the day, guys, as a physician, as a leader in this space, I want to say the following. It's all about how can we leverage our creativity, our humanity, our being, plus AI, using these new tools. And in my case, for humanity, in my case, as a physician, and that creativity is what I want to empower everybody. So to me, these tools means helping people. How can I leverage? How can I leverage space? And I really think that is the key for everybody out there.
Thank you so much, Felipe. Thank you, Ed and Harvey, as usual. Grateful to everyone.